With the Trump presidency coming to an end, many resistance journalists, including author of this Atlantic piece, McKay Coppins, who admits his career was bolstered by Trump, are left wondering what happens next. Here to give their takes on this, our editor-in-chief at The Real News and host of Working People podcast, Max Alvarez, and also co-host of the Realignment podcast, Marshall Kosloff. Max, let me start with you on this one, because this is one of those pieces that was like, it was a gaffe because it was a little too honest. McKay did a great job actually writing the piece and laying out the piece and getting reporters who have made names for themselves and careers and book deals and all of that during the Trump administration to admit that they're looking at the Biden administration a little bit differently. Jim Acosta was the one that jumped down at everybody. He said, and I quote, "I don't think the press should be trying to whip up the Biden presidency and turn it into must-see TV in a contrived way." Acosta assures us this is not a partisan or a double standard. He says it's just that during the Trump administration, being at the White House was an experience that might merit hazard pay. That's going to be approached differently in the Biden administration. There are other quotes here that are in a similar regard of like, things may be different and the way we handle this might be different going forward. What did you make of it?
I did not expect to like this piece, but I did for the same reasons that you said. I appreciated how honest it was. And, frankly, it resonated, right? Because this is as much true of like left-wing and progressive journalists as it is of other, mainstream outlets, right? The Trump bump to all kind of media across the board in 2016 was very real, right? And it was like really what kind of juiced a major surge of subscriptions for Jacobin, for Current Affairs, for a lot of left-wing podcasts, and so on and so forth, right? But, I think that one of the things that really kind of strikes me when I'm reading this piece and when I'm thinking about it and as I'm, trying to run a news network myself is that, in many ways, that sort of Trump bump in 2016 that the media has kind of, ridden for the past 5 years, it was more or less kind of a momentary revival of an industry that has been in severe decline for a long time, right? And so I think that's what was missing from this piece. There's a lot of talk about like, oh, what are we as journalists? What's our role going to be in holding the Biden administration account? And the thing that I wanted to scream is like, it's not just about you. It's not about your your approach, your career. The kind of genies that were let out of the bottle during the Trump administration are not going back in, right? Yeah. And that's something that we talked about before. The media market is going to continue to splinter. The news media as such is going to continue to be some kind of, it's going to be a vehicle of the culture war that's going to continually fragment audiences into their own kind of echo chambers. That's not going away with the Biden administration.
Yeah. I mean, Marshall, people jumped on the Acosta quote. I actually thought the Olivia Nuzzi piece was even more sort of insightful and interesting. So she's another one. She's sort of like a little troubled by how much her career has been helped by the presence of Donald Trump in the White House. And she says there's this kind of temptation to satisfy the resistance with worldview confirming reporting chum. She says it didn't really require any special bravery to report honestly and critically on Donald Trump. I could write in a piece, Donald Trump is the biggest asshole to ever live, and he's a terrible human being and a shitty president, and like he's ugly, and no one would be mad at me except the people who are mad at me anyway for existing. And then she says that she can tell the dynamic will be different. Quote, on a purely social level, I don't know that reporting critically on Joe Biden will feel as safe for reporters. You're not going to get yes queened to death. Pretty interesting and revealing comments.
Yeah, so a couple things there. One, we should really explore what she means by safe, because what's fascinating about the situation is that safe doesn't just mean you're not going to get Twitter mobbed or you're going to get retweeted by the right people. Safe also means your career. Like to Max's point, journalism has been going through a really, really, really tough 10 years. During the pandemic alone, like literally tens of thousands of journalists lost their jobs. But a very safe place to be if you were a journalist, despite all this scrum, was covering the White House beat. where if you cover that beat, if you do the reporting that Olivia's talking about, you get a book deal. Like Olivia's like younger than I am. She's like 26, 27, yet she has a major book deal. Yet she is going on all the biggest podcasts. She has all the right contracts. That is the perfect mix of you're doing your day job, but you also have a really strong career. What's also not going to be true moving forward is no one is going to be getting book deals out of covering the Biden administration. I would challenge anyone who's watching, or even us right here, to think about who is a reporter other than basically Helen Thomas during the, Bush 43 and Obama presidencies, who anyone simply knew. The one thing I would add that disagree a little bit about your point, Max, is the reason why the focus on this part matters, aside from just the problems that journalism is having, is that what was so unique about the Trump moment is it was so much about the personalities. It was a cliche when people talk about this, but this really was 4 years of America, the television show. So Jim Acosta really was a character. Olivia Nuzzi is a character. All these different people are characters in ways they are simply not going to be moving forward. And even people at the New York Times, people who are at the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, these top tier publications who've gotten a lot stronger, even their writers weren't the same degree of personality driven. You are this uniquely, you're never going to be more famous than you are right now thing that you saw on cable news.
And I guess my question, Max, to respond to that is like, part of me agrees that, look, Biden, it's just not the same level of intense excitement and insanity on a day-to-day basis. But I also don't know that there's any like going back from politics as this kind of personality-driven reality show. I mean, this has been going on for a long time, but we talk here a lot about the way that certain politicians aren't treated like people with power to be held accountable. They're treated like celebrities. I mean, Stacey Abrams gets the celebrity treatment. Kamala Harris is the next vice president of the United States, often gets this sort of like celebrity treatment. Beto O'Rourke, getting interviewed by Oprah in Times Square. And no one is even really pushing these people on like, okay, what are you going to do? And what is your record say about what you might do in office? Instead, it's about, their style and their clothes and their fashion, their affect, and all these things that are fundamentally irrelevant to the business of doing the people's work. Is there any really going back from that ultimately?
No, I don't think so. I mean, to Marshall's point, I don't see that the point you made, Marshall, as a disagreement. I see it as a corollary of what we're kind of talking about, right? Is like, because when Trump was elected, we had this kind of ebullient, like, kind of praise for the noble cause of the free press, right? Washington Post changed its headline to "Democracy Dies in Darkness," all that stuff. And yet the manifestation of that was this very personality-driven, career-boosting kind of culture war, right? Like I was saying, like it really kind of accelerated the process by which the media is just another arm for a kind of like cultural arms race to gain clout and to kind of transmute the principles of a free press through kind of individuals like Jim Acosta. And that the problem with that is what I was saying when I said it's not about you, is because this is the question that the press has refused to ask. It's not just about them. The question is, what is journalism going to be? Who's it going to serve moving forward? Who was it serving, during the Trump presidency? That's not a question that a lot of these people have to actually answer, right? Because they just don't, because of the circles that they're in, because of, like you said, that it's actually very safe to be reporting from the kind of White House correspondents, kind of from the White House. But, I think that the question about who is going to be served by this is really the one that we need to be asking, because I think that, to your point, Crystal, one of the things that really caught my eye when reading this piece was like, yes, Trump was kind of we know who Trump was, right? The PolitiFact like fact checker thing said that like almost 80% of his comments were either like pants on fire to mostly false. But then it said Biden's is almost 40, right? That's still a lot. That's still almost half, right? The guy still lies a lot. And like the press is not asking like, well, how are we going to serve kind of the people in all of this? The press is really asking kind of inwardly focused questions. But I think like one other point I wanted to make is that with the Biden administration, we're going to see a lot of that crap that you talked about, Crystal, a lot of the softball hagiography of these individual politicians. No one's really kind of holding politicians to account in any meaningful way. What they are not doing, though, is they're not really thinking about how their reporting, right, is going to kind of help everyday people navigate the political realities that they are facing every day. Because right now, the bare fact of it is that people are exhausted. People want to not have to think about politics every day because the past 4 years have just drained us. And the press, if it really wants to think about how it can uphold its mission, should be thinking about how it must, in fact, adjust its approach to speak to people and activate their political will without triggering their political fatigue.
Yeah, I think that is all so well said. Gentlemen, I could talk to both of you endlessly, both so smart and thoughtful. Thank you guys, and Happy New Year.
Thanks. Happy New Year.
Coming up, contributing editor at Current Affairs, host of the Bad Faith podcast, Brianna Joy Gray is going to join me to discuss the importance of bringing Medicare for All to the floor for a vote. That's when Rising returns.